Ready?
What's up, everybody? We're back on Word of Mouth podcast. We're here live with the one and only Heath Padgett today. If this is your first conversation with Heath Padgett, that makes both of us. This is my first conversation ever. So, well, I guess besides the one we just had. And I'll tell you what, the one we just had right before we started recording was quite pleasant. So, excited for today.
Heath, to give you brief context, I do want you to introduce yourself, but Heath was a senior when I was a freshman, and we kind of became friends because of church, I think, and we've spent a decent amount of time together since then. Went on a mission trip together, and we're roommates in Hungary. We've gotten coffee a bunch of times, and Heath is one of my favorite people. I admire him a lot. He is very well accomplished. Heath, I'd love for you to tell us about yourself. Let our listeners know what they should know about you.
Well, it's a very broad way to open. My name, as he says, Heath Padgett. Went to Stanford now, and then orthodontic residency at UAB.
Go Blazers.
Go Blazers. I'm kind of an odd person. I'm an old soul. I love doing things the old way. I love reading. I love philosophy. I love lots of random things, art, gardening. Really anything that an old person would be interested in, I'm very interested in. Like, I'm part of the Rose Society, and most people there about 60 years older than me.
Wow. 60 years older than you.
Yeah.
85.
Yeah, there are lots of old people. There might be a few.
What is the Rose Society for maybe listeners? Not me, I totally know what it is, but maybe other listeners that might not know what the Rose Society is?
So the Rose Society is basically a club that's housed at the Birmingham Botanical Gardens.
The Botan Gargars.
Yes.
That's what we like to call them.
And this club is for people who are fascinated by roses.
Ah.
And so kind of what piqued my interest several years back in high school, actually. For context, my parents, they don't like gardening. My dad thinks it's a waste of money, so I didn't grow up in a family that appreciates gardening to that extent. But I was traveling in Italy, and this was our senior trip where I went to school, Westminster. We're a classical school, and kind of the pinnacle is this trip to Greece and Italy. And so one day we were in Florence, and we visited these gardens at the Pitti Palace, which was this palace that the Medici family owned, and kind of developed these gardens that overlook Florence.
Wow.
And wandering all the way to the back corner, there's this formal rose garden. And it's just gorgeous. And I was blown away. I didn't know anything about roses at that time, but I said, this is spectacular. I want to learn more about roses. I want to grow my own roses someday, have my own garden. It was a formal garden where you had these groupings arranged in this lovely geometric pattern, surrounded by formal boxwoods. And I was just blown away at that moment. Okay, flash forward. Of course, I didn't have a garden at that point in high school of my own, or at Stanford when I lived in the dorms.
Sure.
But then at dental school, I moved into a house.
Let's go.
Which gave me the opportunity to have my own garden.
Wow.
And so the first thing I did was I ripped out some of the stuff in the front bed and decided I wanted to plant a rose garden. So I went back to all my old pictures and rediscovered this garden that I fell in love with in Italy, and thought, obviously mine's not going to be the same scale. It's 100 acres of spectacular.
You're on your way, but it might take some time.
My yard's very small.
Not 100 acres.
No, not
in
even.
comparison to 100 acres, my yard's pretty small too.
My yard is about the same size as your yard.
Okay.
It's like
Give or
not
take
even
a quarter acre.
If that. My lot, they measure in feet, not acres.
Oh,
if that
gotcha.
gives you some
Right.
perspective.
Right.
But anyways, so I kind of laid out one small little formal rose garden there, similarly bordered by the boxwoods, and then had some old garden roses in the center. And I went to this seminar on antique roses, kind of think through which varieties I wanted to plant.
Yeah.
And so I planted a variety called Quietness and a variety called Marquesa Bacella, which are these beautiful light pink roses that are very full, lots of different petals and all. But then that was that.
Wow.
But then I was in dental school, and there's a professor named Dr. Newmar. She is very into roses. I had just one small little bed of 7 roses. She has hundreds of rose bushes.
Wow.
And she saw a picture of my rose, and she said, "Heath, you need to join the Rose Society. We need younger people to join." And I said, "Okay, I'll come." So I came, and then the president of the Rose Society at the time was Dr. Bobby Babb, who's another dentist. And so it's just like, wow, this is amazing. All these dentists, and there's some heart surgeons, all these dentists and doctors are part of the Rose Society. I think I'll join too. So I joined, and then one meeting, they're like, if only we had a young person who was tech savvy and could do our newsletter. So I started doing their monthly newsletter, and
That's awesome.
kind of turned it more into a magazine kind of thing.
Cool.
Different feature stories and photography and all, and it's been fun. I've enjoyed it.
That is so freaking nuts.
That's awesome.
Wow. So the Rose Society is just a club at the local botanical gardens.
Yes, and if anyone's listening and wants to join, you're more than welcome. You don't have to have any roses, just an interest in roses. We also volunteer at the gardens, help maintain the formal rose garden there.
Yeah, because the garden, like right up to the right when you walk in, is a rose garden, right?
It is.
Huh.
Yep. I helped prune a lot of those roses out there.
Cool.
We have a big prune day in February, and then kind of throughout the year.
I have 2 thoughts on roses, Heath. One, I have 2 rose bushes in my backyard, and I'm gonna be honest. At this point, I like that part of my backyard. I've tried to kill everything, and it won't die. So I have 2 rose bushes that I've genuinely, like, I cut back with no method at all, and they come back like, every time it rains. They just like the prettiest, like they're like neon pink. So I want you to look at them before you leave. There's my first thought. My second thought is, I was watching this talk one time by this dude who's like a business consultant to like high level CEOs. And he was talking about how over time, he kind of served as like this life coach, but I think he had a therapy, he was like a therapist. I couldn't really tell exactly what he did, whether he was a consultant or a therapist or a life coach or what. But anyways, I guess this guy had some sort of experience in leading some sort of major company. So now he talks to other people to do it. And but he kept finding this same issue, like whenever people would, he would talk to these people, and one of the issues, or the issue that he kept doing, he was like, I've come across it so much, and it always like blows people's minds whenever he talks to it. So he's like, I'm just gonna write a book about it. That way it can go like widespread, because it seems to be a widespread problem. And the problem was, the hardest things that business owners, like very successful business owners, sought to do was like pruning their business. Essentially, not like, instead of having, I don't know if this is a realistic example, but instead of having like 10 medium like revenue streams, you have one that has the potential, or you have 3 that has the potential to be like major revenue streams, but because you're giving so much attention to the other like 7 or 9, you're not giving enough attention to the one that like will be it. And he gave a few examples, like with he went to like the world champion wine garden, and then he went to, I can't remember, maybe what are those like Parmesan rounds, like maybe like it was like a cheese place in Italy. And then he also went to the world champion rose garden, which I believe is in France, Rose. Maybe it's in Italy. I don't know. Do you know that answer to that?
I don't know, but it sounds like I'll need to make a trip out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's but there's a competition every year. Like a guy will there's a champion rose, and there's this guy that's won it more than anybody else. And he goes and visits this guy, visits his garden, and he's just talking to him. I don't know how he got a meeting with this guy. It seems like that would be a pretty hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But also this guy does high-level CEO stuff, so
But also we got
Maybe.
Heath in our podcast, so like
I mean, we all hey, every blind squirrel gets a nut every now and then. But no, I think he kept like the one thing that the rose garden said, like the only thing that differentiates the greatest rose gardeners in the world from like the best is like their ability to cut off or prune like great roses, so because they can recognize where the excellent ones are or like where the perfect ones are. If like I don't know if there's ever a perfect rose, but you know what I mean, like the best of the best. And that sort of like idea gives, it's almost like this perfect catch-22 for like, you know, like high-level CEOs are like the most like egotistic. Like they have to be so confident in order to get to that level. Me and Myers talked about that. Like you have to be kind of mentally deranged, like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, in order to do what they're doing. Similar with like Tom Brady has to be kind of wacko in order for him to be as good as he is at what he is. So, anyways, I feel like it scratches the ego itch of like, no, you're like so good, you can't figure out how to be like good in only one way. You feel like you have to be good in 10 ways. So it's like it scratches the ego itch of like, no, you're still good. You just need to figure out how to be good at being good, if that makes any sense. Which I feel like is this really cool thing that obviously all of us can relate to in literally billions of ways. But I've always thought about that whenever I see rose gardens now. And I literally, I mean, for my like rose bush. So I guess I technically lied on my first comment because after I watched that talk, it was probably like 6 months ago. I do prune my rose bushes differently. And honestly, I didn't think about this. You're gonna think this is funny. I literally put pine straw underneath the rose bushes for the first time right after I listened to that talk because I was like, I was so inspired by this like world champion rose.
Now you have
gardener.
to take care of your roses.
But so I guess I technically do, and that was probably in, I don't know, like July or something like that. And I mean, in Birmingham in the summer, like it's pretty much impossible to kill stuff because it rains like so well when it rains, and then the sun is just super kind to anything that actually will bloom will keep blooming. So, anyways, I always thought that was so cool, like the whole idea of like learning how to prune what's best, in order to find like what's excellent. I don't know. So to follow up with that, I'm curious. Like, okay, so you sent us your resume before you came, which I thought was very helpful considering that fact that, like I said, we've never talked before. I only know you as like SGA freaking president. That's all I know you as. But it helped me. And first things first, that was the most impressive resume I've ever seen in my life. It's also the longest resume by a long shot that I've ever seen in my life, which I loved.
I should probably prune it like the roses.
So, but you obviously, it's very obvious in your resume, you've had like millions of opportunities. And I mean, you're literally part of the Rose Club. You have a lot of different opportunities. So in that same lane, like how do you pick like what to do? Like how did you land in dentistry? How did you land? Like, how do you choose to spend your time as like such a successful young person, I guess?
So, it's kind of an interesting story with like a lot of the things I've been involved in, because I'm a go-getter, but I'm not an aggressive go-getter.
Sure.
Like, I'm not the person who just jumps into things and says, I want to be in charge.
You're not like a hustler.
Exactly. But I believe in kind of a philosophy that I've kind of made up called the momentum philosophy. And so kind of what this means is you take the momentum you have from another thing and apply it towards the next. So, for instance, I got involved in Senate as SGA, as a SGA senator because of the momentum from being an Eagle Scout and being involved in things in high school that carried me towards that. And then the momentum of that carried me towards eventually vice president of Senate, the momentum of that towards SGA president, the momentum of that, and that experience helped me become class president at dental school. And what's interesting is, like, I wasn't class president first year at dental school. It was somebody else. But then there's some issues which I'll not get into. But then I was asked, because they'd heard I had experience in previous of organizing things, etc., bringing stability. And same with like the American Student Dental Association. I had no intention to be president of that group, but by being consistently involved, by being a hard worker, by being diligent, those opportunities were presented before me. And I simply said yes. I didn't seek out those opportunities, but said yes when given the opportunity.
That is actually the best idea I've ever heard. That is crazy. The momentum philosophy. I think that is so smart, because a lot of times, like I'm thinking, like this week, as every listener knows, I don't know if you know this about me, Heath, but I work in college ministry at Redeemer. So I work with college students, talk to them about their lives, about their biggest choices, smallest choices, and everything in between. And a lot of times whenever, like, these, like, group of students that because I've been working there this is my third year, but also kind of my fourth, because I interned, like, a while back. So anyways, like, the students that I got close with them, they were really young. They're, like, all getting, like, they're making, like, life choices and stuff right now because they're juniors and seniors. And, like, you think about different students being, like, this guy named Reed, he's trying to go to med school. He's pre-med, like a cancer surgery research major or something like that at UAB. And he's trying to figure out whether he should do beach project or just stay at home and do med school next year, or not med school applications. Because I also didn't realize this. I got on Reddit with him, and I was like looking, I was like, oh, because Reddit definitely has some like med school applicant threads for sure, or subreddits. There definitely was. And I was like, how many med schools did you apply for? Was a subreddit. And dude, some of these people like 65, 83, like 45. But the average by far was like 35. And but essentially what they were saying was like, you apply for the ones in state, those are your best opportunities. And then everyone you do out of state is just, I mean, it's essentially like putting more tickets in the lottery. Like, it's completely random whether you will be the demographic. Like, if Reed is like a white male 20, like, first year applicant. So white male applicant first year, like, or white male first year applicants will just be kind of put into a random number generator or something like that. It's this, they use the same exact technology that sororities use. Wow. Isn't that crazy?
That is wild.
Which I guess that means fraternities too. But yeah, it's completely randomized in terms of like selection and stuff like that, in terms of preferences and all that stuff. But anyways, I think that it's such a weird, interesting thing whenever it comes to like the intersection of faith and momentum too. So that's the only thing I want to like dig in on this philosophy more. Because for him, it's like he has a lot of momentum going for him. He's like doing really well, 4.0 still, junior year. He could graduate in May if he wanted to. He's going to do his fourth year in college though, because he's a chiller and he wants to do college still. And he wants to do more hours, and like I think he's already gotten over 100 hours shadowing in hospitals and yada yada yada. You get it. You're in dental school, and so he's got a lot of momentum going there. He's planning on staying in Birmingham and doing the whole like kind of like faith and works. Like, I want to learn how to be a Christian in the city next summer, and then out of nowhere he gets this opportunity to go to like be a leader at Beach Project, because he did it this past summer, and. So I'm thinking about Reed specifically right now, but to broaden it, like sometimes, like in a way, like I know like faith and work can be like, you shouldn't compartmentalize it, but in a lot of ways, like church involvement and work involvement and career involvement can be compartmentalized, because it's literally, there's only so many hours in the day. So anyways, like, what do you think about that? Like, I guess in like extracurriculars, like, I don't know. Like, if you were him, what would you do, or whatever? However you want to answer that question.
Yeah, I think faith is really foundational. Like, why are you going into medicine? Why are you going into dentistry? Why are you going into whatever you're going into? Mm-hmm. It should be a calling. and it should be your ministry.
Sure.
And I think it's really important in kind of forming who you are, forming your views, or forming how you're going to be a good person in your job, interact with those around you, minister to those around you.
Yeah.
It's very important to be involved in different groups. Coming into dental school, my background had always gone to a Christian high school, a Christian college at Stanford. And so UAB was really my first time ever in my life in a secular environment.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I prayed for going into dental school was to find and be surrounded by a strong Christian community. And thankfully the Lord answered that. At the dental school, we have this group called the Christian Medical Ministry of Alabama.
Yeah.
And they have a presence in the medical school and PT school and all those at UAB as well. But that really became that group for me, that regular group of faithful men in my life who I could lean on through dental school, who could pour into me and I could pour into them, all focusing on the Lord throughout. And so, and really viewing dentistry as a calling, not as a job with the end of making money, but as a calling to, share the light of God to those around us.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, like you wouldn't think in dental school you'd have ministry opportunities, but it's kind of cool because the dental school, you see a lot of people who haven't been the dentist in a while. It's more affordable.
Oh yeah, like your patients.
Mm-hmm. And so, and we're also very slow because, in private practice, you're going to see 40 plus patients a day for general dentistry and even more in orthodontics. So you're churning out patients quick.
Yeah.
But in dental school, you have this amazing opportunity to be slow because you are slow. We see one patient in the morning and one patient in the afternoon. So that means we've got 3.5 hours to spend with this patient. You get to learn their life story. You get to share your life story with them. And so there are several instances where I had the opportunity to pray for patients going through a tough time, and just treat people with kindness. And they might not have expected that or been used to that. And people would ask, "What, are you a Christian?" And it became this amazing ministry opportunity just through dentistry, which was really cool.
That's really cool. Yeah, so that is cool how faith is foundational too, at least obviously for those who are listening who are not believers. This doesn't, we're not trying to force this or anything like that. But for those of us who are Christians, that's really cool how it's almost like it can serve as like this foundational way of helping your ministry too. Not helping your ministry. It can be a help to your vocation. Like your ministry can be a foundational help to your vocation, not the other way around.
Another piece of advice I might add for your friend applying to medical school and all. Sometimes I feel like people in their interviews and all and their personal statement, they want to dance around the idea that they're a Christian because they don't want to offend anybody in the secular world. But I'd encourage people, be bold in your faith. That's your identity. It's who you are. You are a child of God. Be proud of that. Be bold in that. And I think the world is more receptive to that than people might imagine. Even people who aren't of faith see that it's something that you take seriously, that they respect that.
Yeah. That's cool.
That's awesome. Heath, so you also sent us you called it meditations.
Yes.
Can you explain what this 34-page document is?
So this 34-page document is kind of a work in progress. It's pieced together of a bunch of random things I've written over the years, and some random little things that pop into my head. Like at the end, it's just like random thoughts that pop in my head. I type it on my phone, and it has no deep thought in those. At the end, it's just like random sayings and such. But then kind of outline, what I believe in certain regards, a personal mission statement and all. But the name Meditations comes from Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which is my favorite book that I've read. And I've always appreciated this book, but one of my mentors was Dr. Westmoreland.
Yep.
Legend.
The former
Legend.
president of Stanford.
He is the wisest man that I've ever met, that I know.
You think we could get him on the podcast?
I think that would be awesome.
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
I would love
See,
nothing
Heath,
more.
that's not what I asked, though. I didn't ask if you thought it'd be awesome. I asked, do you think we could get him on?
I think we might could.
All right.
We can work on that.
I got him to come out and fill out his March Madness bracket and do a trick shot in front of everyone whenever I was student activities
That's
council
awesome.
director. And that was the
I
only
remember
wild
that
idea.
actually.
That's the only wild idea I got him to do. He literally responded. He said, I literally emailed him and I was like, Dr. Westmoreland, I got the craziest idea ever. And then he said, this idea is crazy enough to where I think I'll do it.
My one crazy Dr. Westmoreland thing is I, as a freshman, made a custom pair of shoes that had his
I
picture on
remember
them.
those.
I remember that.
And I got him to sign them.
That is awesome. Wow. Okay, so you were saying
So-
Dr. Westmoreland.
Yes. So Dr. Westmoreland, when you're around these people, you want to soak up their wisdom
Right.
as much as you can. And one of his favorite books is Meditations, and he actually reads it once a year every summer. And that kind of shaped a lot of his approach to leadership and how he kind of approaches different situations. It's Marcus Aurelius. He was known as the philosopher king. He was born in 121 AD, and kind of his story is his real father died at age 3, and he was adopted by and raised by his mother and paternal grandfather. And then he really took to the Stoic philosophy, even at a young age, at like 10 years old, and was kind of the emperor at the time, Hadrian, noticed this, and he thought, this kid is special. And eventually Hadrian, his heir to the Roman Empire, died. So he needed to adopt a son to take over the throne. And so he ended up adopting Marcus Aurelius' uncle, but only if his uncle in turn adopted Marcus Aurelius, so that there would be this line of succession. Pretty soon after Aurelius' uncle died, or Hadrian died, then a little while later, in 161 or so, his uncle died, and Marcus Aurelius became emperor. And because he actually valued kind of these and lived out these Stoic principles, he was not searching for power. He wasn't driven by power. He was driven by principle, driven by reason. And at the time, he decided that he was going to share the throne with his adoptive brother. So all of a sudden, you have a shared empire between two emperors. And Meditations, what it is it's these writings of Marcus Aurelius to himself. It was never intended to be published. It was never intended to really be for anyone but for himself. It's just his personal thoughts to himself, how to be a good man. And so it's almost like a diary of sorts. And that's one thing I love about it. Sometimes I feel like you read these books on leadership or hear whatever, inspirational speakers, whatever. I feel like they're telling me what I want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they've crafted a message that's going to be palatable to an audience, that's going to sell, that's going to become popular. Marcus Aurelius, that wasn't his goal. His goal was how can I be a better man? How can I think logically through things carefully, and be a better man, and through different Stoic principles. And kind of a lot of it deals with restraint. A lot of it deals with kind of removing emotion, seeing circumstances for how they are, and not being swayed by your feelings.
Yeah.
But one thing I love that he does, when he opens the book, the whole first, they call chapters books. So book 1 is just him reflecting on different people in his life, different mentors, different family members, teachers, etc. And he names them. He says, from such and such person, and then he gives like a short principle that he learned from those people. And so, like, for instance, in my little version here, I thought through different people in my life and different little things they learned. Like, for instance, the one from Dr. Westmoreland, I say from President Westmoreland, to find the equilibrium between confidence and humility, to approach conflict with grace, and leave with opposing parties feeling heard and supported. From my Scoutmaster, Mr. John, to flip the leadership pyramid and find success through servant leadership, to make service continual and part of one's lifestyle. From Mr. Thompson, my old science teacher, to see God's hand in creation and nature, to appreciate details and design, to take time to pause, observe, and always learn, to be a citizen scientist, and to love learning. And this just, it kind of goes on, but that kind of gives you a gist. I kind of thought through, who has been impactful in my life, and what's a little snippet of wisdom that I gained from these different people.
It's beautiful.
That's pretty cool right there. Wow.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about Heath, and I can't find it right now, but I think it was somewhere here. I think it might have been under the section quoting from Meditations. You said something like to be busy but not rushed or something like that.
Uh-huh.
That's something Steve and I work through a lot because we really believe in the value of Sabbath, like having a day where you rest, which there is a difference between rest and laziness, to be clear, but having a day where you rest and enjoy the fruits of your labor, because we believe that's one of the things Christ calls us to do. And from everything we've gleaned from scientific wisdom, equally, it's a good habit to have, to continue sustained work towards a goal and not to experience burnout, which is kind of like a common thing people talk about these days. But I find, I aspire to much, and oftentimes the worldly wisdom is to work harder than everyone else, to work longer hours than everyone else to achieve, which I believe that's going to be really loud, Stephen. I believe in Sabbath, and I believe that the Lord works when you rest. And you do a lot, more even than I do, and I think I'm busy. How do you? I was really interested in that phrase in particular. How do you find yourself to be busy, but not to be rushed, not to be chaotic?
A lot of it, it can be challenging at sometimes, but in order to be busy and not rushed, you have to build into your schedule time for rest. Be intentional about finding rest, and to have certain things in your life that give you rest. Like for me, I like nature, I like gardening, I like all that sort of thing. I like woodworking. My hobbies are kind of how I find rest a lot of times. And I feel like as busy as I am, I do find a lot of time to rest, even more so than a lot of my peers who may seem to be less busy.
Yeah.
I feel like I live the rest of life like I go to bed early. I never stay up late working on things. I'm very consistent and scheduled. And like on Saturday mornings, I'll normally go to a coffee shop and read a book and rest and reflect. And so I build in lots of regular times of rest to be able to recharge. And sometimes you need a larger time. Sometimes that weekly little rest is enough, and you need to get away and kind of spend time in introspection. And for me, those times of deep rest are often found in nature. There's a couple little spots I like to go to. If it's like in town, we have some land over at the foot of Double Oak Mountain that I like to walk around and just observe nature and kind of see the change of the seasons there. And then also a spot out in the Sipsey Wilderness. That's one of the places I like to go and just be in nature, be relaxing. In fact, I guess it was about a year ago, actually, a year ago exactly, before my interview for orthodontic residency, I decided, I really need to get away, to rest, to reflect on life, to reflect on what the Lord's will is for my life. So I went out to that spot in the Sipsey Wilderness and just camped by myself. There's nothing. It's like a random plot that my extended family has out in the middle of several 100,000 acres of the Bankhead National Forest. We have a little plot in the middle of it. There's no roads, there's no trails, there's no cell phone reception, there's nothing. You're literally in nothing. And so it just gave me time to... We live in an overstimulated world.
Yeah.
Where you're constantly on your phone. Every spare minute you're getting a buzz. You're scrolling through Instagram. You're always distracted. But having these places where literally you can't be distracted, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to really reflect on who I was and to come to interview day rested, rejuvenated, and ready to go. And then also recently, I just graduated dental school and then had residency start, but I had the month of June off. And after dental school is hard.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
So I needed to rest.
Yeah.
And I did it in, like you say, busy but not rushed. That was kind of the idea of this graduation trip to Italy, where I was busy in the sense that I had things going on, but it was never rushed.
Yeah.
It was very slow-paced, just enjoying peacefulness, enjoying just whatever inspires you in the moment. Just walk this way, I'll walk that way. Just not overly planned, but restful.
That's awesome, man. I'm curious, Saturday mornings when you are in town, what coffee shops do you go to?
A lot of times I go to Continental Bakery.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of my favorite spot. I love those little tables out
What
by the
little
street.
pastry do you get?
I walk in and say, I'll take the usual.
I love it.
What that means is a cappuccino and a chocolate croissant.
Oh, man.
There's nothing better.
He's a classic man.
It's great.
Wow. I'm also curious, where do you live at in Birmingham?
I live actually right around the corner from Continental Bakery.
Okay. Cool.
Over on, they call it Diaper Row. It's a
Oh, yeah.
little area of houses.
Did you get a house over there, or are you renting?
My parents bought a house that I live in.
Okay. Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, Diaper Row's like where all the Diaper Row is a very much so a Birminghamism for a specific road that's like, isn't it Birmingham city limits or something? Like something about the road makes it really affordable, even though it's like right beside Mountain Brook.
Yeah, it's nice because so Diaper Row is actually the only area of houses that's in the Mountain Brook zip code, but technically considered the city of Birmingham. And so
Okay.
like your taxes are city of Birmingham taxes,
Uh-huh.
but then you almost get the Mountain Brook lifestyle.
Sure.
Because you're literally right at that corner. You feel like you're in Mountain Brook. You feel like you can walk to all the different Mountain Brook villages, walk to the botanical gardens.
Yeah.
It's really nice. Now it's called Diaper Row for that same reason, because you're in the city of Birmingham. You know, the public schools aren't that great. So
Sure.
what happens is you have all these young families that move there, but then as soon as they have a couple kids getting ready to send their kid to kindergarten, okay, that's when they move out. So it's young people have their babies, and then they tend to move out once their kids approach school age.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing, man. You think being from, how do I ask this question? Okay, so you grew up, I'm assuming somewhere around Westminster, like in Oak Mountain.
Yep.
And then you went to Sanford, so you went a little bit closer, and then you now live on Diaper Road, and you went to UAB. As you've gotten closer and closer to the city, how has that like made you like? How has that developed your emotions and feelings towards just like because I feel like you've kind of done it in layers of like a little bit more of the urban things, and then obviously just a lot more of like the problems of Birmingham. What has your experience been with that, just as a Birmingham guy?
Yeah, so it's kind of fascinating. Like you said, I grew up kind of in the Oak Mountain area, went to Westminster. And basically for the majority of my life, growing up, downtown Birmingham really didn't exist to me. It was like, there's just nothing to do there. That was, used to when I was growing up, the Barons were in Hoover.
Yeah.
And there's literally nothing in Birmingham. The only time we went downtown Birmingham was every now and then at Christmas.
Yeah, like
to
the
Alabama
Nutcracker.
Theater.
Yeah.
And like that's all I knew of Birmingham and the hospital.
And McGuane Science Center.
And McGuane Science Center, yeah.
When you were a kid, that place was magical.
But other than that, it's like, why would anyone go to downtown Birmingham?
Yeah.
And it's really grown and changed a lot once, the Barons moved downtown, once they built Railroad Park, had new little housing developments. Like used to, there were no apartments.
Yeah, like nobody lived downtown.
No one lived downtown. But now you kind of have a little bit of a resurgence, and I hope that continues. Sometimes you see projects and all, and it seems to be slowing sometimes, and you think, it could be so much better.
Sure.
But Birmingham in Alabama is holding me as a land of potential.
Yeah.
We aren't where we want to be quite yet, but we have lots of character, lots of history, lots of potential to be something great.
Yeah.
And so that's been fascinating. Also, like you said, kind of, I guess, comparing my kind of perspectives, we have the saying, over the mountain, Birmingham.
Yeah.
Over the mountain, Birmingham means Red Mountain.
Yeah.
And to the south of Red Mountain, we have Mountain Brook, Homewood, Vestavia, Oak Mountain. It's very nice, very safe, and fairly wealthy as well. And then immediately on the other side of the mountain, you're faced with generational poverty and really the complete opposite, which is kind of sad. And like I didn't really realize the different life that I lived compared to a lot of the state and a lot of the city before dental school, and really seeing a lot of Birmingham. It's kind of shifted my views in some ways.
It's definitely wild for sure. I think it's so interesting too. I learned the other day that North Carolina used to be the third poorest state in America 30 years ago, and now it is. I think it's the fastest growing economy in America. I think is what the stat they said was. If it wasn't first, it was second, because of Raleigh and the Research Triangle Park.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting because on this video, it was like it wasn't New York Times, maybe it was Daily Mail. It was some news source that makes like interesting YouTube videos on these kinds of things. But the mayor of North Carolina, governor, sorry, not mayor. The governor of North Carolina was on the video, and he was talking about just like how it happened. And it does seem like kind of random. One thing that I think is interesting about Alabama, because I totally agree with you. I think there's a huge part of like potential here, because I think it's like one of the most I think it's the most forested state in America. So it's just like really pretty because of all the trees and stuff. It's obviously very, like, the ground is very healthy.
And one of the most biologically diverse.
Yeah. And there's also like this thing called it's called like it's between Montgomery, Columbus, and somewhere in Mississippi, like maybe Tuscaloosa, but it's called like the Black Strip. But it's not because of the Black Belt, but it's not because of black people. It's because the soil is like super dark and very, very healthy. And so it's one of those things where like there's so many cool things in Alabama going on, and I just don't really know how other states, like Tennessee, for all intents and purposes, is the same thing as Alabama in terms of like generational kind of, let's just say, like, not great history. And then also like you think Kentucky, and then obviously Georgia, like Atlanta is like just as generationally as kind of wretched, and Savannah as Birmingham or Montgomery or something like that. But I don't really, the one thing that I'm always fascinated by, and something that the North Carolina people really didn't touch on at all, which was super confusing to me, is like whenever someone talks about Alabama, all they say is they immediately bring up like how country we are and how racist we are. I feel like that's just kind of like the stereotype of our state. But, and I'm not saying that we're not those things. I think that we should definitely take a lot of like blame, and I think we obviously work on it a ton, and we talk about it a ton whenever you grow up here and stuff. But one thing that I'm just so confused by is like, why do people not say that about North Carolina anymore? Like, why do people not say that about South Carolina? Why is South Carolina only considered like, oh, Charleston, or like why is South Carolina considered? But I don't know. I feel like Alabama in particular has this like stigma to it that I just find very interesting. Obviously, in a selfish way, because I wish that it didn't exist, and I wish that the state that I'm from and that I live in had a better reputation. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, I don't understand how. Like, you're obviously government minded too. So I like it. I'm gonna have one more thought, and then I'll be quiet because I want to hear your thoughts. It's also fascinating to me, like, when you live in Alabama. I was talking about this with someone the other day. Like, I think it's interesting how if you graduate high school, you can go for free to get an education somewhere in Alabama. Like, whether it's West Alabama, four-year institution, Miles College, UAH, UNA. Like, there's so many like colleges that you can go to for literally so cheap, or even like seriously free if you just make like a 20 on the ACT, like a very low score. So in that, like, and then whenever you graduate, you can get a job in like banking at Regents or Cadence or some one of the big banks, or you can get a job in healthcare at UAB somewhere in Alabama. But there's still like, there's obvious jobs available for people if you just like major in something. But there's just like so many people. There's so much poverty in Alabama. It's like one of the most impoverished states in America. And it really makes me wonder, like, there's so much opportunity here. People just aren't taking advantage of it. And people just aren't doing it. And I don't really know why. Like, I don't know why more people don't take advantage of it here than other places. Like, I understand why people don't take advantage of it. It's because, like, generational, you know, or broken family households, like generational hurt and all that kind of stuff. But I just don't know why it's more like percentage-wise, more people here do it than other states. I don't know. So I think Alabama is such a fascinating thing. But since you brought it up, and obviously I know you probably thought about this because you probably even have it in your meditations as well. But I'm just curious to hear your thoughts, Heath. That's all.
Yeah, as far as outside perception of Alabama, I think one of the main issues is those people that have those perceptions haven't been to Alabama. They don't know the people of Alabama. They've never visited Alabama. Their only encounter with Alabama is driving down 65 on the way to the beach. And then get stuck in that terrible traffic on 65 and then say, I hate Alabama. And that's their perception of Alabama, which is sad. And then from history, all they see is the negative things of Alabama, rather than seeing the progress we've made in those areas. And there's still so much progress to be had because we aren't nearly where we need to be. Like you said, generational poverty is a huge issue. And there are lots of parts of the state that just don't have access to opportunity. But that doesn't mean that it has to be that way forever. Like you said, North Carolina was able to turn that around. And I think Alabama has the potential to turn that around. We're a very business-friendly state. And so I think we have good opportunity from a state government side to attract companies to Alabama. We've got a workforce who's willing to work. And we just need to work on training and getting people ready to work, which part of the problem too is our education system is broken. We have the extremes. You have Mountain Brook, 10 out of 10 schools, fantastic blue ribbon schools. Those people learning there are off to live successful lives. But then you have City of Birmingham schools that rank 1, 2 out of 10 on different scores, high rates of dropout, failure. But my question is, what's the difference? I mean, what they're teaching is probably pretty similar. I mean, it's history, math, science, reading, writing. They're teaching the same stuff, but you have very different outcomes, which, makes you think what's broken. Even funding, of course, your Mountain Brook, those schools, they have more funding, especially for extracurriculars and stuff like that, and their parents and all. But compared to other countries, even our failing schools per child, we as a country spend so much more money per student than almost anywhere in the world.
Wow. I didn't know that.
And so people like to point the finger to money, but I think that's a very lazy response. Money is not going to fix it. Dumping more money into something that's failing will not fix anything.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is our schools are not serving the needs of the students. Because what's the purpose of school? The purpose of school is to prepare you to be a good citizen in this country. But what we need is goals-driven education. Goals-driven education. So
here we go. Here's another momentum philosophy. It's going to be a brilliant idea.
For Mountain Brook and these kind of places, all these kids, their goal is to go to college.
Yeah. And
the curriculum is built to teach the ACT, what you need for that, to be a good applicant for college, and to get a degree. And so for those students, the system works great, and it helps them achieve their personal goals as an individual student. But for a lot of people whose parents didn't go to college, people who don't necessarily envision themselves going to college, why would you try?
Yeah.
Why would you be successful? If that's not your personal goal, you're not going to get there. So we need to create a better form of education that asks, have more diverse forms of education that better meets individuals' goals. Charter schools, I think, are great. I think you need more values-based schools like Westminster and have more access to education. Recently, they passed a new piece of legislation that gives more school choice to people with lower incomes to be able to take basically a tax certificate.
Did that get passed? For sure.
It did.
That's huge. They're
But
opening up a.
It passed the state legislature, and they're still finalizing all the details and everything. I need to follow up on that. I need to.
Yeah. There's a school opening up at Emmanuel, the church that's across from Home Depot up there. Its opening was dependent on that legislation, so that's hype.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But that's what we need. We need values-based education so that people graduate from school knowing how to be a good person, knowing what they value, what they want to achieve in life, and then you'll be able to reach your goals. The purpose of government is not to create dependency. The purpose of government is to create fair self-sufficiency.
I read one of the quotes that you put in here. That was one of the best things I've ever heard summarizing the purpose of government.
Yeah, it's not supposed to.
Brilliant.
It's not supposed to promote dependency. It's supposed to promote fair
self-sufficiency.
Sufficiency. Wow. Okay, I love that.
Exactly. The government. Think of it like you're playing a game, and you've got teams competing against each other and a referee. The government should be the referee. They're moderating fair play so that everyone's abiding by the rules so that people can compete, and competition drives people's ambition to succeed, to work hard, to do well. And so that's why I think capitalism works, but you got to have the referee. Unrestrained capitalism can go too far, and when you have monopolies and all this sort of thing, it eliminates competition. It makes it not fair. So the role of government is to be the referee, to allow fair competition so that the individual can chart their own path.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super helpful.
I like your competition, your game analogy more, your referee analogy more, but I often compare it to parenting. It's like the goal of having children is to create independent children who will go out and be productive members of society. And so almost from the moment they're born, your goal is to make them independent of you. So that by the time, there's obviously different stages of childhood and whatnot, but the goal is when they finish high school at 18 years old, they can go off and become their own person.
I think I feel confident about this. I think this might be considered a hot take, but I feel like pretty confident in this, that I think one of the worst aspects of what expressive individualism is doing to society is that it is assumed that family, the main purpose that family serves in someone's life is turning into being trauma to heal from, rather than like a community to like fight for and love regardless of whatever happens.
Yeah.
Because I think that if your primary identity is not coming from your family name, that is the first time in the history of humanity that your primary identity is not coming from your family name. And I say that hopefully asking for so much grace with people who are, if you've experienced verbal or physical abuse, this idea does not apply to you at all. But I do think that it's super interesting. It is super interesting.
Family is valuable even if... That's why I think it's beautiful to create a family. Because even if your family that you grew up with is messed up, you have the chance to create a family that's not. Or that heals all of those generational wounds that you might have experienced previously.
And really to your question earlier, and kind of ties to what you were saying, the core issue in Alabama, in America, is the breakdown of the family.
Yeah.
People don't value the family unit that's shaped society and morals for thousands of years and been really the foundation of your identity, what you believe, how you care for one another. Even like you said, your family, the purpose of a parent is to shape the morals, the values of their offspring, so that hopefully they can aspire to be better than their parents. That's the goal. And then once we also forget at the end of life, your parents pour into you as you're a child, but then you also have a responsibility to take care of your parents as they age.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think nowadays we don't value that. We would rather just send them off to a nursing home. Now, nursing homes are wonderful and provide a much-needed service, but it shouldn't eliminate the family
involvement,
aspect, the involvement, the connection.
That's a concern I have for my peers who I've talked to who have little to no interest in having children. Is I watched that with all of the great aunts and uncles I have on my dad's side of the family. My dad his family was the only one out of all of his dad's and mom's siblings who had kids. So basically, all his aunts and uncles did not have kids. He didn't have any first cousins growing up. And so then my dad has had to take care of all of them whenever they passed away, or his mom was taking care of them when they were sick and old. And it's
like very tangibly the breakdown of society right there.
Yeah, it was.
Like your dad has to take care of like the will and buying a tombstone for like 10 people rather than 2.
And it was, I mean, they were great people, but it was just kind of sad. It was like Uncle Eric was just down in Dothan, Alabama for like 10 years by himself, and then he just passed away. And he didn't have any family to spend time with when he was old. I don't really know what he did.
Yeah.
He just kind of was down there by himself, and then one day he was gone, and it's just very sad.
That's something that Gracie and I talk about now is, well, first off, we talked about the other day, if we had a kid today, which we're not, but if we did, they would be the class of 2000. Wait, they would be the class of 2046. I think is the math that we said. And it was either 2046 or 2050. Because you graduate when you're 22-ish years old. So which just like freaking blows my mind. And which means realistically, like, we'll probably have a kid that graduates class of 2050, 2052, 2054, whatever it is.
Yeah, college of that year.
Yeah. But like, that's how old your kids are. Like, I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but that's how old your kids are whenever that's how old my kids are going to be whenever they're my age. Like, that's what year it's going to be.
Right.
And that puts it into perspective, like, how old I'll be whenever they're my age. And it kind of makes, it is like this weird idea of like, well, like Jameson and Cole, like our friends, they had a kid, even though Jameson's in the middle of residency, because she was like, they're like 30 and 31 or 30 and 29 or something like that. And Jameson looked at Cole last year and was like, hey, like, I don't really care about what stage of life. Like, life is going to happen regardless of like our ideas. Like, we got to have a kid.
Yeah.
And they had a kid because like, it's seemingly because of this like utility aspect of like, I don't want to be like 75 years old whenever my kid graduates college.
Right.
And but you think about it from like the other end, looking back, and like you said, like what's your uncle's name that's in Dothan? What was his name?
Eric.
Like Eric being like, I feel like no one deserves to have a young person to hang out with more than like an older person who's like slowly passing away and needs to be with their child. Like, that just seems like that's like the design of mankind. You know what I mean? So I feel like families are really good.
It was the first command in Scripture. He told Adam,
be fruitful, multiply.
Be fruitful, multiply. Exactly.
Cultural mandate. Yeah. Yeah, like subdue, or it's like a practice dominion and like subdue and be fruitful and multiply were like the 3 verbs that he told Adam.
There's also like a great respect that it seems like historically the older generations have had, and it seems like that's kind of dissipated in our culture. And it's really unfortunate because, I mean, the part of the design for older generations is to provide wisdom to the younger ones so that they don't make the same mistakes and so that they can make the world a better place incrementally, you know? And if you toss out the old people just because they're old, you're kind of doomed to go down a path you probably shouldn't go down.
I think technology's to blame for this cultural shift because you think about before technology, how'd you get information? It was either from books or from wisdom that other people shared in your life. And so without easy access to information, the easiest access was your family, was people you knew, and they passed down information to you. And so you saw value in that and you valued your grandparents. Now it's sad because some 7-year-old has access on their iPhone or whatever to all the information in the world.
Yeah.
Because information is not valuable in the information age.
Yeah.
Because we have it all. Everybody has it all. But what we lack is wisdom.
Right.
And when you, looking back at history, when you look at Socrates, actually have a little rock here. So Socrates is a philosopher known, of course, for Socratic questioning and all. But one time, his friend visited the Oracle of Delphi. There's that little rock I got from the Oracle.
That's awesome.
Visited the Oracle of Delphi and asked, who is the wisest person in the world? And the Oracle replied that it was Socrates. And so this friend comes back to Socrates and tells him of what he learned. And he kind of laughs and says, no, it's not me. I'm not the wisest person in the world. And he decides to go on this mission to question the people, the men of Athens, who he thinks are wise, to see, is he really the wisest? And by continually questioning, he realizes that these other people aren't wise. The men of Athens aren't the wisest. And it's this kind of Socratic questioning to arrive closer to truth. But he then concludes that the only reason that he is the wisest is because he knows that he knows nothing. He's the wisest because he knows that he knows nothing. And it's this humble acceptance of ignorance, not thinking that everything that you think you know is the absolute truth. By being open to questioning, open to learning more, you can arrive closer to truth. And that acceptance allowed Socrates to be the wisest. And so when you look at today, we think we know it all. Because you can ask me any question in the world, and I can Google it and have AI. Now Google has AI, so it even spits it out faster. I don't even have to click on the article. It spits out an answer to any question in a matter of milliseconds. And so I think our generation thinks that we are the smartest because we have all the information in the world and we think we know everything, but we don't. And we need to recognize that we don't. Yeah. And that's where we need to lean on the older generation, lean on others who have experience, not just knowledge, but experience that gives true wisdom.
Yesterday I was on the boat on the lake with a few of my buddies, and love being on the lake, by the way. Just want to say that. So let's talk about the lighter things of Earth real quick. Love being on the lake. The lake's awesome. It was 90 degrees. Probably the last time it'll be 90 degrees all year. I don't know. Maybe it'll be 90 degrees today. Hopefully we're done with it. But anyways, I was like, we were talking about AI, and we were talking about how helpful it is in so many ways. And specifically why it came up was because the Pink Pony Club Plankton cover, like Plankton from SpongeBob. Did you watch SpongeBob growing up?
I wasn't a huge fan. My brother really liked it.
Okay.
So, I saw plenty of it on TV.
Okay, well, anyways, Myers definitely didn't. And so
I wasn't allowed to. My mom said it rots your brain cells.
Which definitely true. To this point, we were just laughing about it because AI is this brilliant technology. You could do anything in the world with it, and instead people are writing code to auto-generate plankton covering just a very mediocre song. Not a mediocre song, sorry. Pink Pony Club's a great song. I'm not trying to hate on music. I also have a working theory that people don't like good music anymore. People want music just to kind of do the job. They don't really care about anything else. So, and I guess that also speaks to this point too. But anyways, I was just we were joking about it and laughing about it. And I was like, why did they create AI? Why do we have, and obviously I'm not talking AI like the Terminator or robots or something like that. I'm talking about the way that we primarily interact with AI is through an online search engine setting, and it just gives us information faster than we can do it on our own. So for me, I use AI to help me with a grocery list, to help me with if I'm trying to create a budget, and it's a more complex formula of the other day I was how many dollars do I have per day for the rest of the month if I buy this? So it's essentially did 3 averages all at once. Or for me, I use AI to whenever I'm studying Hebrew, if I want to break down Hebrew words and it breaks apart all the suffixes and prefixes, and there's no other platform on planet Earth that does that. It's super helpful whenever you study ancient languages that don't make any sense. So I primarily use it in that way, but I also read the other day that Mark Zuckerberg said that he wrote Facebook. He literally, AI helped him code Facebook. So I don't know how that works, but I was just is AI only just to help people get work done faster? Is that the only reason it exists?
Well, all AI isn't. It's only good as its database, because all it does is it connects pieces of information and recognizes patterns, and then puts things together and through some very complex algorithm.
Which is
theoretically
what our brain is supposed to learn how to do.
Exactly. Right. And our brain, has all these neural networks, and the more you use certain neural pathways, the easier it becomes, et cetera, and faster. And so basically it's a brain in that sense, but where I think AI is going to start to go wrong is right now its database is based in reality and truth.
Huh.
But soon there's going to be so much AI-generated content that's going to start making its way into the algorithms. And I feel like you're going to get further and further away from the truth.
Yeah, it will be the source of truth.
They'll probably claim that they'll put some hidden little markers in it so it can read its own AI to filter it out, whatever. But I feel like we're going further and further away from truth. Even people use AI to write their personal statement for applying to something. Is that really true? If it puts this nice, well-worded thing and you tell it, emphasize these themes, is that really true about that person?
Sure.
It's spit out some lovely worded piece of garbage that sounds nice but isn't actually characteristic to the individual. So I feel like in that sense we get further away from truth, even though it's great, but I don't know.
I heard the former CEO of Google talking at speaking to a Stanford classroom, I think it was. And his talk helped me understand AI more than probably anything else I've listened to. And his point of kind of the flaw and maybe the danger of AI is similar to what you're talking about, is it has consumed all of the data that humanity has ever created. So it's gotten to the point where it can consume all books ever written, everything ever written by man, and then there is no new data for it to consume. So then it just has to create its own data to consume itself. So it becomes a positive feedback loop that, like you're saying, isn't really based on like understanding and truth that's been developed over centuries of time. It just becomes this thing that it self-perpetuates, and it creates its own data that it consumes itself. And so it will create derivatives from that are not necessarily based on truth. It's like several deviations away from truth. And so eventually it becomes not truth.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is it's such a supercomputer, it has such a massive capacity that we can't necessarily create enough truth to feed it, if that makes sense. And that's one of the flaws of AI, is like you can't really teach it how to think because it is based on algorithms.
Yeah.
And like one flaw that I could see is like in dentistry and medicine, all you base truth of principles based on the academic research, and you search on PubMed and find all these published articles, this, that, and the other. But say there are several articles saying one thing from these different research experience, but say a new technique comes out that proves something different. Now the human would read the article in the journal, they'd analyze the research methods, and then they'd conclude, if these things disagree, that the new one is either true or it's false based on their interpretation of it. But AI, it's going to read this new one equally compared to the dozen other older articles that exist.
Yeah.
And by connecting information, it'll probably be stuck with whatever's more prominent, not necessarily what's more true.
Sure. Oh my gosh.
AI is so complicated and hard to understand.
And it's so interesting to me how, like, going back to your personal statement thing, I feel like that is where it gets super interesting, because the thing is, the reason that people do the personal statement thing through AI is because it literally helps them get in. So people care more about like the status than they do about the honesty. And that like dissonance, I feel like so much in the world right now.
Yeah.
Sure.
Me and Steven talk a lot about like the flattening of society.
Yeah.
Like social media, it stunts people's ability to think and create beyond what they see. Because obviously you take inspiration from the things around you. And when most of your time is spent looking at this and what's like trending and popular, then you just imitate the things that come up the most and are
it almost
and
like
popular.
Subconsciously becomes your god. Like that's the weirdest part about it to me. Like I think it's so interesting. Like I was thinking about this the other day. I was on my bike. Also, literally, I am getting more and more confident that my number one cure to the phone, and the phone being like, I've also thought a lot about how on our last podcast you said like you like the term brain rot because it does give at least a little bit of like credit to the fact that it's bad for our brain.
Yeah.
You know? But anyways, I think the number one cure to like brain rot or just like what the phone is doing to our brains.
I'm not.
It's like a meme term to explain like memes that are just like not even funny. They're just like ridiculous. Honestly, like SpongeBob is like brain rot to a certain extent. It's just like just jump slap humor or whatever. Just like not even. It's not even like a.
It's not even like an actual joke. It's just an absurd image or video that if you spend a lot of time on Instagram, you'll think it's funny. But it, like, objectively is not necessarily funny.
It's just like it's unexpected, whatever. So, and that's just humorous to us because it's like, oh, I didn't anticipate that. Ha ha ha.
And when you spend so much time on social media and you see so many funny things back to back to back, eventually, like, the funny stuff isn't funny anymore, and you just need something absurd to laugh.
Addictive pathway.
Yeah, yeah. So, anyways, I was on I think the number one cure that I have for it is like go buy a bike and go ride, because I think it's fascinating to me because when like literally walk on Jemison Trail, everyone else that's walking is on their phone on a walk in nature. Yeah, I want to scream at people. I'm like, go on a run or go on a bike ride, because when you're on a run, your phone, you literally can't look at it because it's bumping up and down. But when you're walking, like I want to scream at these people, like you shouldn't be on a walk in nature if you're on your phone. Like you're ruining the benefits of it to your mental health.
Yeah.
Anyways, but when you're on a bike, you literally have to use your hands too. So, anyways, I feel like it actually brings you back down to going on a run or going on a bike ride forces you to live at the speed of being a human being more than anything else in the world to me right now. So so I was on my bike the other day, and when I realized what I've coined is this term bike clarity. So I think when you're on a bike ride, you have your brain begins to like work and function in these like really cool ways, especially in thought life. So for me, I had this bike thought the other day, and it was awesome, especially the more and more I've like kind of sought after it. But anyways, Donald Judd is this guy that I am absolutely obsessed with. He is my inspiration for so much of what you're seeing in this room right now, my carpentry. If you see right there at that 1001 Spring Street brochure is that is his house in Soho, like that thing, that little white sheet of paper underneath.
Which we need to go by when we're in New York.
You would literally die. But that's his home. He bought a cast iron building in the 40s whenever Soho, I don't know if you're familiar with New York at all, but Soho was originally supposed to be turned into an expressway for people to get out of the business district as fast as possible up to where they're living up near the park. So it was just supposed to help. But then, it was just a bunch of useless old factories. This was after the Industrial Revolution. And but Donald Judd didn't think it was going to happen. So he bought this house for $40,000, which I think is today the equivalent of like $350,000. And now Nike bought the building next door for $50 million from Donald Trump, actually.
This is a reminder to myself to put an image of Donald Judd's house on our Instagram.
Yeah. So, but anyways, this guy, super fascinating. That's like one of the first things he did. But this guy, he invented the idea of the permanent installation. So he believes that the artist should set where an art is at its like final eternal space. So he moved to Marfa, Texas, Marfa, Texas is this like railroad town. Literally, it's 3 hours from anything else. It's just in the middle of the desert, but it was a military place. Whenever I think there was something about like the southern border, they thought there was going to be a war and like something like that. But anyways, the military base went up for sale in like the 60s or 70s, and he bought it, and then he turned the whole military base into his like shrine and has all these like permanent installations all throughout it. His library is a permanent installation. All of the like airplane hangars he built, all these things, and the whole idea is he believed that the selling of art or just selling in general was a necessary evil because all you're trying to do is just set up your life in the way that you want it to be. Anyways, it doesn't get it like so many of his ideas have made me think beyond I've ever thought in my life, and he just like really loves like simple 45-degree angle carpentry, and I'm like obsessed with him. And I was thinking the reason I was thinking about it on my bike was like it's so crazy to me how I have ideas and I want to do so many things, but I don't. But I probably have more ideas, and I probably think that so many things are cool, more than anyone ever has in the history of mankind, because I'm so exposed to so many cool things, right? Yeah. But what happens in turn is like I don't end up doing anything. And then I thought about it, and I was like, what if Donald Judd would have been lulled to sleep by the algorithm? And like, what if he was born instead of born in like 1930 or 40? What if he was born in 2005 and his parents gave him an iPad and he just like his brain became fricked and he just like fell in love with Minecraft and that was enough for him. He never built anything in the physical world.
There are a lot of 45-degree angles in Minecraft.
Yeah, but you're not building anything actually tactically real.
Right.
When you're doing that. You know what I mean? So, and there's nothing, I'm not hating on gaming. I think gaming is like super difficult and very impressive when people are good at it. But I think it is super interesting to me that like that idea for whatever reason, because like for me, he's a hero. Like for you, what did you say the guy? I don't know how to pronounce his name. The 112. Marcus Aurelius. Is that what you're saying? Marcus Aurelius. Like, what if he would have been born in 2005 and been an iPad kid? You know, like it's crazy to me. I think that while we might be getting like much better, like in terms of our self-actualization or something like that, or just like our awareness, I don't really know if we're getting any better, like literally. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if like what the technical definition of the word literally is, but it seems like it hits pretty on the head right now. That like you still like, it doesn't matter how much you watch those YouTube videos of people like cutting like yards that have gotten completely out of control. Like those are awesome videos to watch, but like you still have to go outside and cut your own yard. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter how much you like that video. It doesn't mean you're into cutting yards unless you cut your own yard. Like,
right.
It's just that's a super dumb random example, but I feel like there's like this huge, like I was saying, there's this disconnect in just like the literal admiration and this like just fascination with. I don't know.
One of my other favorite books is called A Sand County Almanac. It was written by a guy named Aldo Leopold, and basically what this book is, it's in a sense it's kind of similar to Meditations. It's this basically journal that he wrote to himself, observing the land. He had like 120 acres out in Wisconsin, and the first part of the book goes month by month, his observations, and he just kind of comments on what he sees in these walks across the land. And one of my favorite quotes is when he's describing firewood. During this quote, he says, "If one has cut, split, hauled, and piled his own good oak, and let his mind work the while, he'll remember much about where the heat comes from. And with the wealth of detail denied to those who spend the weekend in the town astride the radiator." So it's basically showing, like, by him working the wood, cutting the wood, splitting the wood, hauling the wood, piling the wood, he appreciates the whole ecology, the whole process of his toes being warmed much more than most people in town and modern society just sitting by the radiator not even thinking about it.
What is the variant of that? It's like, what was the verb? They appreciate the radiator? Is that what you said?
In town, astride the radiator, so like next to, I guess.
Astride the radiator? Is that what the word?
Yeah, that's what he says.
That is so cool.
And then he goes on in this description, and I don't have it written here, but he goes on to talk about this, where he says, "We sense that these two piles of sawdust were something more than wood, that they were the integrated transect of a century, that our saw was biting its way, stroke by stroke, decade by decade, into the chronology of a lifetime, written in concentric annual rings of good oak." And he goes then and kind of looks at how many rings there are, kind of thinks through how this tree stood during World War II and even back to the Civil War, and how much history this tree has seen, how in times of drought it had these real slim rings, and how in times of flood and lots of rain it grew a lot that year, and how that tree experienced so much history and all that it took to grow, and then to eventually be struck by lightning and die and be milled into his firewood.
Holy crap.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's insane. Literally last week I was talking to, dang, this is about to get super Christian. All right, here we go. Last week I was talking to these,
Pastor.
There was these students we were talking to that are on like leadership for our college ministry team. And we were talking about how, I mean, we always base everything in, like on our gatherings, the word prayer worship. And you think about, like, I can't remember what quote it was. I think it was a Calvin quote or something like that. But essentially it says that the wood by itself is nothing without like the Spirit being the lighting it on fire. With the wood being like the word, you're just like it by itself is nothing. There has to be like something else to be a part of it. And we talked about it, just like the whole process of building fires being such a cool thing. And there's this other quote that I read like a while ago, and it was like if somebody really enjoyed firewood, they wouldn't just if they had 1,000 like logs, they wouldn't build a huge fire and gather a bunch of people all at once to experience and love it for one day. They really fell in love with, like, if they really loved fire, they would like portion it, and they would do like a small fire with a few people that could feel the warmth every night for the rest of their life. You know, they would do like 3 logs a night for however long it would last. You know, maybe not. I don't know what the exact metaphor was. But the actual love of something comes at this like longer, bigger fascination than just like this instant kind of gratification with it. And I feel like that sort of idea, I really love that. I love that a lot. Like the man who like cuts his own wood, gathers it, and stores it, loves the feeling of warmth much more than the person in town who sits beside a radiator ever could even like imagine enjoying where it comes from. You just take it totally for granted.
Yeah.
This summer when I was in northern Italy, one of the places that I really wanted to see is this restoration shop called Bellini Nautica that restores vintage Riva boats. And now a Riva, if you're not familiar, is this gorgeous wooden boat. And really their heyday was like in the 50s, 60s, early 70s, the La Dolce Vita period of Italy. But most gorgeous, beautiful boat ever made. But anyways, when you're at the restoration shop, you got to really appreciate the care for the wood and the craftsmanship. And Mr. Bellini, who's the owner of this restoration shop, in order to find wood to restore these boats, he'll travel down to South America and hand select the trees that are going to be milled for the beautiful mahogany. In each part of the boat has different types of mahogany that he likes the characteristics better, the different grain, strength, etc., are hand-picked for each different piece of wood. So it's not just a mahogany boat. It's tons of different types of mahogany in certain positions in order to create something that's beautiful and functional. But then what blew my mind even more is he hand-picks all the wood, but then he carefully ages the wood for about 10 years before it's ever used in one of the restorations. And that attention to detail just makes the appreciation for the boat so much more when you think about all the care, all the thought that goes into every detail, all the years it took to grow, to age, to be what it is. It's just so much more valuable than some modern fiberglass boat that they just spray the fiberglass in the mold and pull it out.
That's actually insane.
Heath, you have built a boat.
I have.
Tell us about that.
So, I've always loved boats. I've always loved woodworking. And like I was part of the St. Ford crew team, and that kind of introduced me to rowing boats in particular. And somehow I found out about this boat building class in Annapolis, Maryland. And so between my junior and senior year at St. Ford, I took a trip up to Maryland to do this boat building class and learn how to build a rowing shell. So it's this 21 foot long, narrow rowing shell. It's built out of akume wood, which is like this light hardwood from the Congo. But it's gorgeous. And the process of building the boat gave me such an appreciation for things that require craftsmanship, that require time to build. Like you can, with the money, you can buy you can buy anything in the world for money. But money and spending money on things that are expensive does not give you appreciation.
Right.
Appreciation comes from hard work, from actually taking the time to build things. There's a quote from George Pocock, which is, this famous boat builder from the, I guess, early 1900s. He helped the Washington team go to the Olympics and all back in the day. But he said the ability to yield, to bend, to give way, to accommodate was sometimes a source of strength in men as well as in wood, as long as it was helmed by inner resolve and by principle. And it just kind of shows that the best things take principle. The best things take this inner resolve to take time and build it. Another quote I love, Sir Robert Baden-Powell, he was the founder of Boy Scouts. He said, "Happiness is not mere pleasure, not the outcome of wealth. It's the result of active work rather than passive enjoyment of pleasure." So with this boat, it took a lot of active work. It took hours and hours and hours building this thing before I finally finished it. And the hardest part was the actual finishing. You put layer after layer after layer of varnish, and then you like sand down between, so that it has this slippery, glass smooth finish. And I remember the first time I put it out in the water, it's like, one, is it gonna float? Because I'd never built a boat before. Like, I hope this works. Two, like
it does need to float if it's going to be a good boat.
That's very important.
Yeah.
But thankfully it floats well. And then the other question is, so it's 21 feet long. If you're just a fraction of an inch off on your dimensions or the fin, or if it doesn't run straight, then you're going to get in the boat and you're just going to go in circles, which would be sad. But putting it on the water, experiencing the boat, my smile answered it all. It was just so much fun. And anytime I have the boat at Lake Purdy now and go out when I can, but the appreciation I get anytime I'm in that boat, thinking of all the work that went into it, it just gives you so much more happiness and pleasure than anything money could buy.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good place to stop. Because we could just keep on going for hours and hours and hours. I totally understand why you spend, what'd you say, 3 hours every single time you spend time
every
together?
time Heath and I get coffee, we hang out for probably 3 hours.
Dude, this is actually mind-boggling. I really hate... I've probably known who you are for... Did we graduate the same year, or are you younger than me? I can't remember.
2020, spring 2020.
Yeah. So we graduated the same year. It's the first time we've ever hung out.
I thought you were a year older. I'm sorry. I misspoke.
Missed opportunity there. Hey, you served my student government well. I was just one of the common dwellers that you were serving.
You served too with student activity?
That's right. I guess
Sure.
I did technically serve you at some points too. I remember being in the same, like, at Lighting of the Way. I remember being in like kind of the same, like rubbing elbows at the event maybe. But besides that, I don't know if I ever really rubbed the elbows with the president. Hey, but like you said, the Boy Scout thing. I mean, you flipped the pyramid upside down, so you're at the bottom. You're serving me, just one above you, I guess. I don't know where I was in honestly, the hierarchy of SGA at Sanford was always a confusing thing to me. But anyways, I'm rambling. Either way, guys, I hope that y'all are blessed as much as we were talking to Heath today. This was definitely, I mean, honestly, he introduced himself. He said he was into philosophy, so you kind of knew what you were signing up for whenever you kept listening after that. But this was probably definitely the most, like, brainy,
deepest.
Yeah, this is definitely
we've ever
the
had.
furthest past middle talk we've ever gone, which I love. But no, seriously, it was awesome to have you on.
Thank you, Heath.
Appreciate y'all having me.
Not even lying, probably one of my favorite WOM episodes I've ever done.
Those are a lot.
Personally, I don't know about for other people. But
And there's so many things we didn't touch on.
Literally so much.
This
could
depth
have
to
been
Heath.
This could have been a 3-hour episode if I didn't have something this afternoon right after this. I definitely would have let it go. But anyways, thanks so much for being here, guys. We love you so much, you WOMers, you woman out there. Yeah, cheerio then. Thanks so much for listening. secret segment of the podcast where you have to stay till the very end.
By the way, we're not done yet.
Secret stuff. Heath, have you ever listened to an episode of Word of Mouth before? It's okay if not.
Listen to the one with Kyle Bowman.
Wow.
No way.
Kyle Bowman legend. So were you aware that there was a secret segment at the end of it? Did you listen to all 2 hours of the Kyle Bowman?
I got through most of it. I don't remember if I got
Maybe
the
he logged off whenever we said bye. Yeah. But yeah, we do secret segments at the very end where we talk about secrets, and only people that really are bought in can hear these secrets.
Only people who listen for the full, sometimes 2 hours that we do this.
No, Heath, genuinely, I am so curious. What's the romance like, man? You literally are like present day Mr. Rogers too. I have to say that. Mr. Rogers is also a hero of mine. Like I would say if my Mount Rushmore was like 10 people, Mr. Rogers is on it. Maybe even 7. Like he's up there for me. I think he's fascinating. As you can tell by The World According to Mr. Rogers book on my counter or whatever you call that, my piece of furniture right there.
Yep.
So I don't know. Do you date? Are you married? Like,
I'm not married, not currently dating. So
wow. Well, ladies, if you're listening to this, give Heath a call. He's part of the Rose Society. He'd probably give you good gifts.
We do have a 40% female listenership. I looked it up the other day after you asked. We're 40-60. 40 girls, 60 guys.
Wow. Yeah, that was only a secret question I had. What secret questions do you have, Myers?
Heath, should I buy a Volkswagen Beetle?
like a newer one.
An old one like what you have?
I think they're pretty cool. I mean, it's an air-cooled classic. It kind of takes you back. It's like the affordable version of the Porsche 356.
Right.
The entries. They're cool.
Is your car running?
Right now, I need to
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, that makes me sad.
I want to come see your car. I've never seen it before. Heath has
You've never seen
I've never seen it.
How old
Not
is
in
it?
person.
So this is kind of interesting story too. So, way back in the day, my mom, she's in high school, and it's time for her first car. So my grandparents get her a light blue Volkswagen Super Beetle.
Oh yeah. What year was it?
74. But there's a problem because my mom couldn't drive stick shift. So she gave it a try and it didn't work out. So she ended up trading with my grandmother, who had the Oldsmobile station wagon. And so my mom ended up driving the station wagon, and my grandmother drove the Volkswagen Super Beetle around town, and she loved it. It was kind of known around town, zipping through the gears of the Volkswagen around town. But then, over the years, grandmother got different cars and all, and this car was kind of forgotten. But my granddad actually kept the car and had it restored. And I'd always kind of heard about it. I'd never really seen it, and just always heard, oh, he's got this old car. And so it's high school, it's homecoming week, and it's 70s day. And something...
Oh, yeah.
And they always had like competitions and all. We had a house system like in Harry Potter, and I was like, ooh, it would give me a leg up in this competition if I came in a car from the 70s. How cool would that be? So I did.
You know how to drive stick.
Yeah, I learned
Let's
how
go.
to drive stick, and it was fun. But then I kind of kept the car after
that,
day at high school. And I actually drove it kind of as my daily driver a lot.
I used to see you parking it at Sanford, and I was like, who the heck has a Beetle? Because it had a Beeson Woods sticker.
So,
1974. I want to look up a picture of it.
I drove it as my daily driver in high school, but then, of course, needed like a more practical car, so I switched to a 4Runner. But then at Sanford, I brought it and my 4Runner at Sanford, and like, I was so nervous because at the time, I don't know if you remember, and they still have parking problems today, but there was a big parking town hall
Yeah.
And people were like complaining about not enough parking spaces and all. And I was just so nervous that whole time. I was like, oh no, if like I can just see the Sanford Crimson cover now, SJ president has
2 cars.
2 cars on campus during parking crisis. Thankfully, it never came up.
Wow.
But the whole time during the parking crisis, I thought that would be a big scandal, but it wasn't. But
the most scandalous thing Heath has ever done.
Yeah. No, I had parking permits for both, so it's completely legal.
Right.
But yeah, right now the carburetor's clogged, and it's been a while since I've driven it. It's just sitting in my driveway. I need to get it fixed, but I just haven't had the time, which is a bummer. But I'd like to get it fixed up, get it running again. I love cars. My goal in life is to have a small car collection someday.
Wow.
So we'll see.
Okay, this is my this is my next question. Then you just definitely segued directly into it. All right, dream car first. I want realistic. Like, what's your dream car in the next 10, 15 years? And then also dream car before you die, you want to have this car.
So my dream, semi-realistic, which is still a stretch because it's a couple $100,000, but would be an Aston Martin Vantage. I think the new one that just came out is sweet.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know orthodontists made enough money to where you're a couple 100,000. That's realistic in the next 10 or 15 years. That's hype though. Aston Martin.
That would be awesome.
It's called a Vantage.
Aston Martin Vantage. It's really cool. But then kind of my dream stretch car would be a Ferrari
Aston Martin car.
Dino, 246 Dino. And what's interesting is, so the Dino, it doesn't actually have Ferrari badging on it.
Interesting.
It was the 246 numbering stands for, it's a 2.4 liter V6.
Wow.
And it's named Dino after Alfredo Dino, which is Enzo Ferrari.
Yeah.
His nickname was Dino. Enzo Ferrari's son, who passed away at age 24, but he had always wanted to introduce the 6-cylinder sports car because he was fascinated by Porsches and some of these other smaller, lighter cars that were popular in the 50s and 60s. So they came out with the Dino, but Ferrari, they were known for their V12s. That was their thing. And so they didn't want to necessarily hurt the Ferrari brand. So it was a Ferrari-produced car, but under the branding of Dino, which honored his son who had passed away, and that was his passion.
It's so interesting.
And then my first encounter with this car, I was in, I think, 5th grade. And I was at the Barber Motorsports Museum here in Birmingham. And I come around the corner, and they've got this gorgeous 246 Dino. I think it's a 1972 model, sitting there. And before I knew anything about the car, all I knew is that it was the most gorgeous car I'd ever seen. And I went up to it and I said, "This is amazing. This is my dream car. This is what I want to aspire to someday." Not even knowing that because of the Dino badge, you're like, what even is this? And then, when you realize it's a Ferrari, it's even cooler.
Yeah.
So that was the dream.
So catch Heath and I in 25 years driving around in a Dino and a 356.
Wow. I would love to be sitting in the passenger seat of either of those cars if y'all would have me.
Yeah.
The good thing about vintage cars is, and not all vintage cars, but certain vintage cars like the Dino, like the 356, they're only going to appreciate value. They're special enough, collectible enough that they will hold their value and appreciate and value, whereas other cars won't. And so I can somewhat convince myself that if I had the money, it might be worth it.
Yeah. That's something that's super interesting to me, where whenever you get to a certain money point, like if you're at Seinfeld, it's almost wise for him to be into that versus something else because he has so much money that he can, essentially just put it all into what's the stock that your S&P 500. He can put it all into S&P 500, or he could get like a cool little hobby that might appreciate even faster than S&P 500. And he also gets to play with it.
He's made millions of dollars in Porsches.
Yeah. So I think it's cool where you can buy a Dino and like your great grandkids will be happy you bought a Dino,
For sure.
And in a weird way, I've never thought about this, because it appreciates, the faster you buy it, the more you'll save on it.
Exactly.
Like I've never thought about that aspect.
I need to go out and buy one today.
Yeah,
Right.
That's what you should do.
Right. The Dino market kind of fluctuates, so you just got to buy it when they're in the 200s. And
Yeah, recently, I wish I would have bought it probably like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That would have been ideal. Because now, like,
It's not like $1 million.
it's like a $600,000
about
car
now.
now.
Sheesh. Wow.
But I anticipate it.
Being
They'll-
a
they'll
million.
We
probably
have
be
a
$1 million car.
K-shaped economy, okay? So in a K-shaped economy, you've got the wealthier getting wealthier and having a higher share. So things that appeal to people at the top are going to climb in value much quicker than anything that's kind of middle of the ground.
Interesting. Do you think that'll ever happen to old Land Cruisers? Because Toyota's a simple brand.
I think, old Land Cruisers have enough of a following. People like to do like a resto mod, whatever, make them more usable. People love to buy them for their beach house or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a fun kind of a car.
Like a Jeep equivalent, yeah.
It's a cool little Jeep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked about it this past podcast. I'll talk about it again. I think the new Land Cruisers are the prettiest cars that have come out, and I genuinely don't remember the last time I saw a car. I think
Probably 10 years.
this is really going
Do
to...
you like the new Lexus GX?
It's just the
Basically
Land
the
Cruiser. It's just because from my understanding, Lexus is like a relatively new brand. Like it came out in like
the 90s.
the 90s. Okay, my guess was going to be 2005.
Is that right?
I think so.
So, and to answer your question, I actually was talking about this with Cameron Hayner. Shout out Cam Hayner, one of my best friends that I roomed with in seminary. And I said, anybody who gets the Lexus GX 640, 460,
460 or something like
anybody who gets that needs to have like an ethical briefing with someone, because it makes absolutely no sense. You'd pay $30,000 more and get that car. It's on the same chassis, it has the same driving belt, it has the same engine. The interiors are the exact same, except for there might be like a little bit more wood or more suede, or like the seats might be like massaging. But again, you could just get the massage seats in the Toyota. So it makes no sense. Every single time I see a Lexus around town, I'm like, I guess they couldn't find the Land Cruiser for sale anywhere. Like, that's literally my assumption, because it doesn't make any sense why. Anyways.
Used to, like, the Lexus just had more of a feminine look.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, that's, the ladies' version of the Land Cruiser.
Yeah.
It is.
Cushy, but
Isn't the Lexus one, isn't it like a little bit bigger than the Land Cruiser? It's literally the same
exact
size.
Same size.
even though, so
Like, that is so wild to me. Like, I don't understand why that. Like, that is such a mind game.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like,
Well, like you're
they
saying,
have used to the Land Cruiser and the LX were the parallel models. Now
Mhm.
it's the Land Cruiser and the GX, the parallel models, which is odd.
Yeah.
How they kind of shifted that.
We
yeah, and the
talked
Forerunner is the bigger one now.
yeah,
of
we
the
talked last
three.
week about how it doesn't really make sense that they make the Forerunner and the Land Cruiser now, because
They're the
they're the
Mhm.
same thing.
Yeah,
And
same place in the market.
Tacomas are so, like, the new one is so big now. And I'm curious, does Toyota have a smaller truck?
Not
It
now.
was the Tacoma, but
Yeah.
the Tundra used to be the giant one.
Yeah.
And then the Tacoma was like your little one. But now, like you said, it's
There's
Yeah.
now like a
Full-size truck.
third. The Ford Maverick is now the small truck, and then the Ford Ranger.
That's like the city.
It's like the
Ford Maverick's
city truck.
city
Yeah,
truck,
like they make a front wheel drive version of it, so it's even
Yeah.
smaller. And then now the Tacoma is like a medium sized truck,
Uh-huh.
and then the Tundra is the big truck, and then the big truck is like the F-250. So there's almost like 4 sizes,
Yeah.
or even 5
I'm
sizes
interested to
of
see it.
trucks
Toyota
now.
will for sure come out with some micro, like Tokyo truck.
city truck or something. Yeah.
They barely already exist in Tokyo. Are y'all Toyota people? Like, well, I mean, I know you were Mars, but do you know if there's one in Tokyo right now? Or like, is there a Japanese tiny truck?
I mean, they made those like tiny, like the right hand, like the car that Tim, who owns Punch Love, has, those like tiny micro trucks that are like 2-person cabin, basically just a work truck for like small spaces. They made those. I don't know if they still make one.
Yeah, they have a $10,000 pickup that you can buy.
Oh, Toyota did make
that right there.
Yes,
just
yeah. I was gonna say they don't make that in America, but that is like
you can buy them online. They just deliver them to you. Oh, here we go. The 2024 Toyota Stout.
Yeah, it's like a utility truck. It's not no frills.
This is a new one right here. We're really just This is a secret segment. It's okay if we ramble. I'm actually curious if this is going to be because that's a huge hole in there.
That first one you showed me, they do make that in other markets, but not in America.
I would straight up drive one of those.
I know and a lot of people on the internet are like mad that they don't make that in America because everyone's like, I just want some like truck I can beat up on, because I think they're selling them for like $18,000 or something insane. Like they're mad cheap.
When I was in Italy, they had a Mercedes pickup truck. That was kinda interesting.
No way.
The X Class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But of course you can't get that in the U.S.
It's like a Mitsubishi.
Yeah, they're coming out with them.
Mercedes badge.
They're coming out with these in 2025 in America. They look just like Mavericks.
Yeah.
They did make them in this looks kind of like Australia, or is where a lot of the pictures are, or something like that. But that's what they looked like back in early 2000s, 90s. It was like you can see on the bed that it's more of like a utility truck.
Yeah,
that's the type of stuff that I'm really interested in. I like the that Mars is fascinating because, I mean, obviously I work in ministry. Like, unless I write some freaking book one day and make which there's no shot because publishing, you have to live in LA or New York or whatever to get access to publishers that'll make you millions of dollars. But anyways, living in Birmingham, like I just have I aspire to be the best like minister of the gospel I possibly can be. But the tie with like financial compensation is like a little bit more like harder to like parallel with that, if that makes any sense, than y'all's two industries that y'all are like practicing. And so anyways, I think about that all the time. And I get really into like different things. So like I think that old Toyota Camrys or like Toyota Corollas from like 1985 are so cool. Like, and I also think that like I'm just I just am obsessed with like just classics in all kinds. And I think the only area where like luxury touches, what'd you say that the term was, like the middle pot, like the middle ground or something like that in the K shape? Middle market. I think the Porsche is the only thing that really like touches it, because I feel like Ferrari is so like upper class. Bugatti is so upper class. Like there's so many of these brands that are upper class, but I feel like for whatever reason, Porsche 911 is just like,
it's always been the attainable.
The Converse. Like, I don't even, it's like the Converse high top of
It's always
shoes.
been the attainable sports car.
Yeah.
Like, you have to work hard and you do have to really set aside money to get there, but you can get there.
And it's practical enough to be a daily driver, reliable enough to be a daily driver. Whereas your Ferrari, it has to be your third or fourth car.
Yeah.
Like, it's not something you're going to drive to work.
Yeah, that's like a Saturday kind of thing, because the oil change is like so expensive, new tires are so expensive, yada yada. But I think that super old trucks like that. Like I think that people who like do mods to old Toyota Tacomas are just like I think it's the coolest thing in the world. And like if you can get an old Toyota Tacoma with less than 100,000 miles, like it's expensive, but it's $25,000. It's not $100, $200, $600,000 or something like that. So I get into it too, but in a very different way.
The other truck that I just love is the G-Wagon. I just think it's so cool. But I will say, I think it's sad how G-Wagons are perceived today.
Mm-hmm.
Used to, in the early 2000s, a G-Wagon was, no one knew about it.
Sure.
It was this refined adventure type person's vehicle. Very utilitarian design. It wasn't designed to be cool. It was designed to be practical. its boxiness.
It's like a military car first, right?
Exactly. It was designed in 1979 to be the best off-road vehicle available. And that's its purpose, not to drive around the Kardashians and be obnoxious.
And all the girls from Brentwood that come to Sanford.
Yeah. So I think, in a sense, that's sad. I love it because it still retains its soul as a G-Wagon. And the fact that it kept that same pretty much exact design from the 70s. Like, what other new thing can you get that has the same design as the old?
Still has the 3 differential lockers.
Yeah. It's just amazing in that regard. And the clunk of the door when you slam it closed and the doors locking.
They still look amazing. Like they don't even have a... Like, you know how a lot of doors will have like an interior and an exterior piece with like insulation in the middle? G-Wagons have that now, but it still looks like they don't, you know? Like military cars was just the metal sheet that like locked in place. Yeah. And I like how they still keep that like kind of indented, like
have you ever
old look of it.
Opened and closed one of their doors?
I have. I don't remember like why or how or when though.
You have to actually slam the door. That's crazy. Yeah, because it has a robust lock that like if you just kind of tap it, it's not going to close all the way. So you feel like it's a really expensive car, so you're kind of scared to slam it, but you have to because they have it's like double pane glass or something like that. Like it's a very tight seal, so that it can wade through water.
Interesting.
And so the doors are pretty hefty.
You know what I learned is also getting popular right now? Speaking of old Nazi memorabilia, the German army shoe, or the GAS, was an Adidas shoe that is like literally what the Samba and like the original soccer shoes, like Copas, were modeled after. GASs. Adidas doesn't make them, but other people make them, and also the Beetle was in Hitler's socialism. It was the free car that everybody got.
Volkswagen is the people's car.
The people's car. Yeah, it's fascinating to me, man.
These are kind of cool.
I saw somebody was telling me the other day that somebody saw a picture of a Tesla. Was this you telling me, Myers? I don't know if it was you or somebody else, but somebody saw a picture of a Tesla. And a bumper sticker on the back was like, I bought it before I knew who he was, talking about Elon Musk. And then somebody commented and was like, I have a Volkswagen. I'm going to put this on mine too.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's funny.
My favorite Tesla tag that I've seen here in town was a Tesla, and it had like a you know how people do custom tags or whatever?
Yeah.
It said coal-powered.
Yes, I've seen that one.
Which is true because if you live in Birmingham,
it's all coal power.
It's coal power coming from the
clean
West
coal,
Jefferson coal plant.
But
well, semi-clean. It's clean coal, but we're like the 3rd dirtiest in the entire nation.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
Hey, we're not first place. We're 3rd at least. I don't know.
Do you need to go?
Yeah. It's this is the longest secret segment we've ever had. 30 minutes, but that was all good. Heath, it's been awesome having you on, man.
Thank you.
Loved every second of it.
Thanks,
Cheerio.
man.
Thanks for listening, guys.